Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The crystal chandelier above table 7 had been flickering all night, casting dancing shadows across the white tablecloths like restless ghosts. I'd been watching it between trips to the kitchen, wondering if it would finally give out, wondering if I'd still be standing when it did. My feet screamed inside the second-hand heels I'd worn to look presentable. The left one had a crack in the sole that let in cold air, and the right pinched my little toe until it went numb. But Marcello's demanded elegance, even from its waitresses, especially in the private dining room where men in suits that cost more than my yearly rent came to conduct business over wine that could have paid my mother's medical bills. I pressed my fingers against the bruise on my ribs as I balanced the tray of champagne flutes, willing myself not to wince. The memory of Jake's fist was still fresh. 3 days old, maybe 4. Time blurred when you were working double shifts and sleeping in 2-hour increments. He'd been angry about the money again, about the baby, about everything I couldn't give him fast enough. The baby he'd put inside me and then decided he didn't want. The baby I'd lost 2 months ago in a cramped emergency room while he was out drinking with his friends. The bruises had faded from purple to that sickly yellow-green, but they still hurt when I breathed too deep. "Table 12 needs their second bottle," Marco hissed as I passed him near the kitchen doors. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "And for God's sake, smile. You look like you're serving at a funeral." I wasn't far off. The private dining room had a particular energy tonight. Tense, coiled, like a snake preparing to strike. The usual clientele was already intimidating enough. But tonight there was someone new. Someone who'd arrived an hour ago with an entourage that made the other diners fall silent mid-sentence. I hadn't seen his face yet, only the broad shoulders in a suit so black it seemed to absorb light, the silver cufflinks that caught the chandelier's glow, and the way every other man in the room suddenly sat up straighter, spoke quieter, moved with deliberate caution. His table? Table 3. The best position in the room with views of both entrances, had been cleared and reset 3 times before his arrival. Marco himself had supervised, hands shaking as he adjusted the silverware. "Who is he?" I'd whispered to Sarah, the other waitress on shift. She'd gone pale. "You don't know? That's Dante Moretti. Don't look at him. Don't speak unless he speaks to you first. And whatever you do, don't mess up his order. Dante Moretti." The name had weight, gravity, the kind that pulled everything into its orbit. I'd heard whispers. Everyone in this part of the city had. Drug trade, human trafficking, political corruption, bodies that disappeared into the river. Whether the rumors were true didn't matter. What mattered was that people believed them, and belief was its own kind of power. I picked up the champagne bottle from the service station, checked the label twice, Krug, 2008, $800, and approached table 12. My hands didn't shake anymore. I'd learned to control that. Learned to smile through anything, learned to make myself invisible. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant tips that kept the electricity on, and food in the refrigerator I shared with 2 other girls in an apartment where the heat only worked half the time. The men at table 12 barely glanced at me as I poured, their conversation continuing in rapid Italian. I caught fragments, numbers, names, something about shipments. Not my business. Never my business. As I turned to leave, the room's temperature seemed to drop. I felt it before I saw him, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it, that made the air itself hold its breath. My eyes lifted without permission, drawn by some invisible thread, and suddenly, I was looking directly at him. Dante Moretti. He sat with the stillness of a predator, one hand resting on the table, the other hidden beneath it. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jaw, straight nose, lips that suggested cruelty and sensuality in equal measure. But it was his eyes that trapped me, held me frozen in place like a butterfly pinned to cork. Dark, nearly black, and utterly focused. On me, heat flooded my cheeks. I'd broken Sarah's first rule. Don't look at him. I dropped my gaze immediately, heart hammering, and moved quickly toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard a low voice speaking. His voice, I realized, rich and textured like expensive whiskey. And the immediate silence that followed, everyone listening, everyone obeying. "Girl." I stopped. The word wasn't loud. but it carried across the room with absolute authority. My stomach dropped. "Come here." My feet moved before my brain could process the command. Years of obeying men who held power over my livelihood, my safety, my survival, had taught me that hesitation only made things worse. I approached his table with my eyes down, the empty champagne bottle still clutched in my hand like a talisman. "Look at me." I raised my eyes slowly, up close. He was even more devastating, and more dangerous. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, and his hands, resting on the pristine white tablecloth, bore the faint marks of old violence. Scarred knuckles. A burn mark near his wrist. These weren't the hands of someone who merely ordered violence done. These were the hands of someone who'd done it himself. "What's your name?" His English was perfect, barely touched by an accent, which somehow made him more unsettling. "Emma." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Emma Foster. Emma." He tasted my name like wine, rolling it on his tongue. "You're new here." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. 3 months, sir." "Sir." A slight smile curved his lips, not quite reaching his eyes. "Polite. I like that." The two men flanking him, both built like concrete walls, both watching me with predator's eyes, remained motionless. One had his hand inside his jacket. The other's gaze kept flickering to the room's entrances. Security. Bodyguards. Killers, probably. "You look tired, Emma Foster." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "When did you last eat?" "Sleep?" The question was so unexpected that I almost answered honestly. "I'm fine, sir." Liar. But he said it gently, almost with amusement. "Bring me the Barolo. The 2010, not the 2012, and a glass for yourself." My heart stopped. "Sir, I can't." "You can." His eyes never left mine. "I'm requesting your company. Marco won't object." "Will you, Marco?" I glanced toward the kitchen doors where Marco stood frozen, face white as the tablecloths. He nodded frantically. "I don't drink on duty," I managed, though my mouth had gone dry. "Then don't consider yourself on duty." Dante gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Consider yourself my guest." This was wrong. Every instinct screamed danger, warned me to run, to make some excuse and flee to the safety of the kitchen, but there was no safety anywhere. Not really. Not for girls like me. And something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, not through me, not past me, but at me, truly seeing me, made me want to stay. I set the champagne bottle on a nearby service station and walked, dreamlike, toward the wine cellar. My hands trembled as I found the Barolo, checked the year twice, selected 2 glasses. The bottle was worth more than my monthly rent. If I dropped it, Marco would take it out of my pay for the next 6 months. I didn't drop it. When I returned, Dante had dismissed his guards to the bar. They went reluctantly, maintaining visual contact, hands still inside their jackets. The table felt suddenly intimate, isolated, despite being in a room full of people. Those people were now very carefully not looking in our direction, conversations resuming in hushed tones. I poured with practiced precision, hands steady despite the riot of fear and curiosity and something darker churning in my stomach. He watched my every movement like he was memorizing me, cataloging each detail. "Sit." I sat. He raised his glass, waited until I lifted mine. 2 unexpected encounters. We drank. The wine was velvet and smoke, complex and layered, probably wasted on my unsophisticated palate. But I appreciated it anyway, let it warm my throat, blur the edges of my exhaustion just slightly. "Tell me, Emma," Dante said, setting down his glass with deliberate care. "Why does a girl who can barely stand work a shift in the city's most expensive restaurant?" "I need the money. Everyone needs money. I'm asking why you need it badly enough to work yourself into the ground." I hesitated. Truth was dangerous, but lies, I suspected, would be worse with this man. Medical bills, rent, survival. Whose medical bills? My mother's. She has cancer. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. "And your father?" "Gone. Long gone." He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. "Siblings?" "A brother. He's..." Away. Prison, but I didn't say that, and you support everyone. I'm all they have. No. His voice dropped, took on an edge that made my spine straighten. The question is, who do you have? No one. The answer rose to my lips, but I swallowed it back. Admitting that felt like exposing my throat to a predator. Before I could respond, the room tilted. Just slightly, just enough to make me grip the table's edge. The chandelier's lights blurred, multiplied, became stars wheeling in my vision. When had I last eaten? Yesterday morning? The day before? Emma. Dante's voice seemed to come from far away. When did you last have a meal? I tried to answer, but my tongue was thick, uncooperative. The bruise on my ribs throbbed in time with my heartbeat. The room spun faster. I stood, or tried to. My legs buckled like paper, and suddenly the floor was rushing up to meet me. And I thought distantly that Marco would definitely fire me for this, for fainting in front of the most dangerous man in the city, for making a scene, for being weak when I'd promised him I could handle the shift. But I never hit the floor. Strong arms caught me, pulled me against a chest that smelled of cedar and gunpowder, and something darker, more primal. Dante. He'd moved faster than should be possible for a man his size, caught me like I weighed nothing. Get the car. He barked at someone. Now. I tried to protest, to say I was fine, but consciousness was slipping through my fingers like water. My head fell against his shoulder, and through the haze I felt his hand supporting my back, felt the exact moment his fingers brushed against my ribs, against the bruises. His entire body went rigid, very carefully. With a gentleness that contradicted everything I'd heard about Dante Moretti, he shifted his grip, pulled back my uniform blazer just enough to see. I heard his sharp intake of breath, felt the temperature around us drop 10 degrees. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. Terrifyingly soft. Who hurt you? I wanted to lie. Every survival instinct I'd honed over 23 years of disappointing men screamed at me to say it was nothing, an accident, that I'd fallen downstairs or walked into a door. The kinds of lies women like me told to keep the peace, to avoid making waves, to survive another day in a world that punished us for being breakable. But consciousness was a luxury I couldn't afford right now, and my body had already betrayed me. Through the fog threatening to pull me under, I heard voices, sharp commands in Italian, the sound of chairs scraping, footsteps approaching rapidly. Dante's arms tightened around me, not painfully, but possessively, like he was claiming territory. Everyone out. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Now. I fought against the darkness, managed to open my eyes to slits. The private dining room was emptying with remarkable speed, men in expensive suits abandoning half-eaten meals, Marco practically running toward the kitchen, Sarah's wide eyes finding mine before she disappeared through the service entrance. Only Dante's guards remained, flanking us at a respectful distance, hands visible now, but ready to move. "The car's out front, boss," one of them said, the one with the burn scar across his jaw. "Should I call Doc Castellano? Already did. Tell him we're coming to the house, not the clinic. And Marcus?" Dante's voice dropped lower, took on an edge that made even the scarred guard straighten. "Find out everything about her. Employment records, address, family, friends, enemies, everything. I want names by the time we arrive." "Boss, maybe we should—" "Are you questioning me?" "No, sir." "Then move." The guard vanished like smoke. The other one, younger, with careful eyes, stepped closer. "What about the girl's things? Her purse, phone, bring everything." Dante adjusted his grip on me, one arm beneath my knees, the other supporting my back. I should have protested, should have insisted I could walk, but my body had decided to mutiny. The edges of my vision kept going dark, and the floor seemed very far away. And tell Marco he's permanently removed from my preferred establishments list. That girl was dying on her feet, and he had her serving wine. He didn't know. He didn't care. There's a difference. The younger guard nodded and moved away. I was vaguely aware of being carried through the restaurant's main dining room, faces turning, whispers spreading like wildfire. And then the cool night air hit my face like a slap. The parking lot. No, not parking lot. The street outside, where a black SUV with windows so dark they looked like holes in reality waited at the curb. The vehicle was enormous, clearly armored, with a driver already behind the wheel and another man opening the back door. Dante slid into the back seat with me still in his arms, arranging me across his lap like I was something precious, something that might shatter. The door closed with a heavy thunk that spoke of reinforced steel. The interior smelled of leather and gun oil, and that same cedar scent that clung to his clothes. Drive, not the highway. Take Riverside and watch for tails. Yes, sir. The vehicle moved smoothly into traffic. Through my half-closed eyes, I watched streetlights streak past, painting golden trails across the window. Dante's hand rested on my hip, carefully avoiding the worst of the bruises, but I could feel the tension in his fingers, the barely restrained violence humming beneath his skin. Emma. His voice was closer now, quiet enough that only I could hear. Stay with me. Don't you dare disappear. I tried to focus on his face. It was easier now, in the dim light, to see him as human rather than monster. The sharp angles softened slightly. His eyes, which had seemed so cold in the restaurant, now held something that might have been concern, might have been anger, might have been both. I'm fine, I whispered, though we both knew it was a lie. You fainted. You're covered in bruises. You're clearly malnourished and exhausted. His jaw tightened. That's not fine, Emma. That's not even close to fine. Just needed to eat. I'll be okay. When? The word came out sharp. When did you last eat a real meal? I tried to remember. Time had become elastic, stretching and contracting unpredictably. Wednesday, maybe? There was pasta at the staff meal. What day is it now? Friday? It's Sunday. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You haven't eaten in 4 days? Had it been that long? The days bled together when you worked 18-hour shifts, when sleep came in stolen moments between jobs, when the bills piled up faster than the money came in. I had coffee and crackers from the break room. Madonna. He said it quietly, like a prayer or a curse. His hand moved to my face, fingers tracing my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. What kind of man lets a woman starve herself like this? I'm not. There's no man. Not anymore. The bruises say otherwise. My ribs throbbed as if in response to his words. I wanted to close my eyes, to slip back into that peaceful darkness where nothing hurt, and no one asked questions I didn't want to answer. But Dante's gaze held me pinned, demanded truth even when lies would be easier. Ex-boyfriend, I finally admitted. Jake. He's gone now. Gone where? I don't know. He left after... I stopped. I wasn't ready to talk about the baby, about the loss that still felt like a wound too fresh to touch. He left. That's all that matters. Dante studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling sensation that he could see straight through me, past all my carefully constructed walls, down to the raw truth I kept hidden. When did he hit you? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? The question came out sharper than intended. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Just a waitress who fainted and embarrassed you in front of... You didn't embarrass me. His voice was absolutely certain. And you're not nobody. Not anymore. The word sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. There was a finality in his tone, a declaration that felt like a door closing, or opening. I wasn't sure which was more terrifying. The SUV turned onto a quieter street, trees forming a canopy overhead, houses becoming larger and more spaced out. Old money territory, the kind of neighborhood where security cameras hid behind decorative landscaping and property lines were measured in acres rather than feet. Where are we going? I tried to sit up, but Dante's arm tightened, keeping me in place. My house. I have a doctor on call, a real one, not some emergency room resident who'll ask questions and file reports. He'll check you over, make sure you're not seriously injured. I can't. I have to work tomorrow. I have a shift at the diner at 6, and then I'm supposed to cover for Sarah on Tuesday, and you're not working tomorrow. I have to. I need the money. Emma. He waited until I looked at him. I'll take care of it. You don't understand. My mother's treatments, the rent, I understand perfectly, and I'm telling you that I'll handle it, all of it. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone again. a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. You're not going back to that restaurant. You're not going back to whatever rat trap apartment you're living in, and you're sure as hell not going anywhere near this Jake again. Fear and something else, something warm and dangerous, coiled in my stomach. You can't just decide that. I can. I am. I don't even know you. You will. A promise and a threat, wrapped together so tightly I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The SUV pulled through a gate that opened silently, revealing a driveway lined with manicured hedges. The house beyond was enormous. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a jewel box. Security lights blazed on as we approached, and I caught sight of cameras. Guards stationed at intervals, the kind of protection that spoke of real danger, real enemies. This wasn't just wealth. This was power, the kind that made governments nervous and rivals disappear. I can't stay here, I said, panic rising despite the exhaustion weighing down my limbs. This is your Dante Moretti. He said his own name with neither pride nor shame. I know what you've heard about me. I know what people say. Most of it's true. Then you understand why I can't. I understand that you're scared. I understand that you've been hurt by a man who should have protected you. I understand that trusting me seems insane. The vehicle stopped, but he didn't move to open the door. But here's what you need to understand, Emma. I saw those bruises. I saw how thin you are, how exhausted. I saw a woman dying by inches because she's too proud or too scared or too conditioned to ask for help. His hand cupped my face, forced me to meet his eyes, and I'm not letting that happen. Not to you. Not while I can prevent it. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you care? For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his features. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. The door opened. The younger guard appeared, my purse in his hand along with my coat. The threadbare one with the broken zipper that I'd hidden in my locker because it wasn't nice enough for Marcello's standards. Dante carried me out of the vehicle and up the front steps, as if I weighed nothing. The door opened before we reached it, revealing an older woman in a cardigan, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, concern etched across her weathered face. Madonna mia, she breathed. Dante, what happened? Not now, Rosa. Is Doc Castellano here? In the study, waiting. I prepared the blue guest room like you asked. Her eyes found mine, and something in them softened. Poor child. Come. Let's get you comfortable. Inside, the house was warm and smelled of bread and herbs. The entryway alone was larger than my entire apartment, with marble floors and artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Dante carried me up a curved staircase, down a hallway lined with closed doors, and into a bedroom that looked like something from a magazine. The bed was enormous, covered in what looked like real silk sheets. French doors opened onto a balcony. A fireplace took up most of one wall, already lit, casting dancing shadows across thick carpets. He set me down on the bed carefully, like I was made of glass. The doctor will be up in a minute. Rosa will stay with you. If you need anything at all, just ask. I grabbed his wrist before he could pull away. His skin was warm, the pulse steady beneath my fingers. I still don't understand why. Dante looked down at our joined hands, then back at my face. When he spoke, his voice was rough. 3 years ago, my sister fainted in a restaurant. She was covered in bruises, too. Her husband had been beating her for months, but she never told anyone because she was afraid. Afraid of him. Afraid of bringing shame to the family. Afraid of being weak. He pulled his hand free, but gently. By the time we found out, it was too late. She died in the hospital 2 days later. Internal bleeding that we could have stopped if anyone, had asked the right questions sooner. The confession hung between us like smoke. I saw the grief in his eyes, old and deep, and understood suddenly that this wasn't really about me. It was about the sister he couldn't save, the guilt he carried like a stone around his neck. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Be alive. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. And Emma? Tell the doctor everything, every bruise, every injury, every moment that bastard touched you, because I'm going to find him. And when I do, He's going to wish you'd never walked into my restaurant. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the terrifying realization that I'd somehow traded one dangerous man for another. Except this one had resources, power, and a very specific kind of justice in mind. The door opened again almost immediately. An older man with kind eyes and a medical bag entered, Rosa following behind with towels and what looked like a tray of food. "Miss Foster," the doctor said warmly. "I'm Dr. Castellano. Let's take a look at you, shall we? And while I work, Rosa here will make sure you eat something. When was your last meal?" I looked at the tray. Soup, bread, fruit. More food than I'd seen in weeks, and felt tears prick my eyes. "Wednesday," I admitted. "I ate on Wednesday." Rosa made a distressed sound and immediately began fussing with pillows, positioning the tray within easy reach. The doctor's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. "Well," he said gently, pulling on gloves, "let's fix that, shall we? And then you can tell me exactly what happened to give you those bruises." As he worked, checking my vitals, examining the bruises with professional detachment, asking quiet questions I answered in equally quiet whispers, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt oddly like relief. I'd walked into Marcello's tonight as Emma Foster, invisible waitress, nobody special, a woman so used to being overlooked that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. But I'd fainted into the arms of Dante Moretti, and now everything was different. Now, I was somebody's problem, somebody's responsibility, somebody's obsession, and God help me, I wasn't sure I wanted to go back. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of sheets that didn't scratch against my skin. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The ceiling was too high, the mattress too soft, the silence too complete. Then memory crashed back like a wave. The restaurant, the fainting, Dante Moretti's arms catching me before I hit the ground. His voice, soft and deadly. "Who hurt you?" I sat up too quickly, and my ribs protested with a dull ache. Dr. Castellano had wrapped them last night after determining that 2 were bruised but not broken. He'd catalogued every injury with clinical precision, the fingerprint bruises on my upper arms, the boot-shaped mark on my thigh, the split lip that had mostly healed. He'd said nothing, but his eyes had grown progressively colder with each discovery. When he'd finished, Rosa had insisted I eat the entire tray of food, watching like a hawk until I'd consumed every bite. Then she'd helped me into pajamas. Silk, obscenely expensive, clearly new, and tucked me into bed like I was a child. I'd been asleep before she'd closed the door. Now, morning light revealed details I'd missed in last night's haze. The bedroom was decorated in soft blues and creams, feminine but not frivolous. Books lined one wall, real books, leather-bound, the kind people collected rather than read. Fresh flowers sat on the dresser, white roses that perfumed the air. Through the French doors, I could see the balcony overlooking manicured gardens that seemed to stretch forever. A knock at the door made me jump. "Miss Emma?" Rosa's voice, warm and maternal. "Are you awake? I have breakfast." "Come in." She entered carrying another tray, this one laden with enough food for 3 people. Eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pastries, orange juice, coffee. Behind her came a younger woman with an armful of clothing still on hangers. "Good morning, dear. How are you feeling?" Rosa set the tray on the bedside table with practiced efficiency. "Dr. Castellano said you should take it easy today. Keep your ribs immobilized, and you're to eat every 2 hours until we get some weight back on you." "Rosa, I can't. I need to call my work. Let them know. Already handled." She fluffed the pillows behind me with the determination of a general arranging troops. "Mr. Moretti spoke to your employers this morning, both the restaurant and the diner. You're on indefinite medical leave, and they've been compensated for the inconvenience." My stomach dropped. "Compensated how much?" "Enough that they won't ask questions or expect you back." Rosa's expression brooked no argument. "Now eat. And this is Maria. She's brought clothes for you. Mr. Moretti had them delivered this morning." Maria stepped forward, revealing an array of clothing that made my second-hand wardrobe look like rags. Jeans that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sweaters in cashmere and silk. undergarments with designer labels still attached. "I can't accept these," I said weakly, though my fingers itched to touch the fabric. When had I last worn something that wasn't worn thin or stained or held together with safety pins? "You can, and you will." Rosa's tone left no room for debate. "Your old clothes have been laundered, but frankly, child, they should be burned. No one under Mr. Moretti's protection dresses in rags, under his protection." The words sent a shiver down my spine. Protection meant obligation. It meant debt. It meant I'd traded Jake's violence for a different kind of cage, one with silk sheets and gourmet food, but a cage nonetheless. "I need to see him," I said, pushing the tray aside despite Rosa's disapproving sound. "Dante, where is he?" "In his office, conducting business. He left instructions that you're to rest, eat, and not worry about anything." Rosa crossed her arms. "And before you argue, let me be clear. Mr. Moretti's instructions are not suggestions. I don't care. I need to talk to him. Now." Something flickered in Rosa's eyes. Approval, maybe, or respect. She nodded slowly. "Finish your breakfast first, then I'll take you to him. But don't say I didn't warn you. He's in a mood this morning." I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my mind racing. I needed to understand what was happening, what he wanted from me, what price I'd be expected to pay for his help. Men like Dante Moretti didn't rescue waitresses out of kindness. There was always a price. 20 minutes later, dressed in jeans that fit perfectly and a sweater soft as a cloud, I followed Rosa through the house. In daylight, it was even more impressive and more fortified. I counted at least 4 guards stationed at various points, all armed, all watching with the casual alertness of predators. Security cameras nestled in corners, reinforced doors, windows that I suspected were bulletproof. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. Rosa stopped outside a heavy wooden door, knocked twice. A voice from within, Dante's, sharp and impatient, said something in Italian. "English, please," Rosa chided, opening the door. "You have a guest who doesn't speak the language." I stepped into what could only be described as a war room. The office was dominated by an enormous desk covered in papers, laptops, and what looked like surveillance photos. Maps covered one wall, marked with pins and notations. Another wall held screens showing various camera feeds, the house, the gardens, what looked like city streets. Dante stood behind the desk, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand braced on the polished wood. He'd shed last night's jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with more scars. He looked dangerous and exhausted in equal measure, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. When he saw me, something in his expression shifted, the hardness softened fractionally. He said something curt into the phone and ended the call. "You should be resting. We need to talk. After you've recovered, now." I stepped fully into the room, ignored Rosa's warning sound behind me. "I need to understand what's happening. What you want from me. What this..." I gestured vaguely at myself, the expensive clothes, the implied protection, costs. Dante studied me for a long moment, then dismissed Rosa with a slight nod. She left reluctantly, closing the door with a soft click that sounded unnervingly final. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair facing his desk. "I'd rather stand." "Emma." My name was a warning. "You have bruised ribs, and you fainted less than 12 hours ago. Sit down before you fall down." I sat, but only because my legs were shakier than I wanted to admit. He rounded the desk, leaned against it so he was closer, arms crossed over his chest. The position should have been casual, but instead felt deliberately intimidating. He was still taller, still more powerful, still capable of crushing me with minimal effort. "What do you know about me?" he asked. "That you're dangerous, that people fear you, that you run..." I hesitated, choosing words carefully. "Businesses that aren't exactly legal." "Businesses." His mouth quirked slightly, diplomatic. "Yes, Emma, I run the kind of businesses that operate in shadows. I control territory. I have enemies who would kill me if given the chance, and allies who would betray me for the right price. I am exactly as dangerous as you've heard. He paused. Let that sink in. But I'm also a man who takes care of what's his. My people are protected, provided for, given opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. Loyalty is rewarded. Betrayal is punished. And what I claim, I keep. I'm not yours to claim, aren't you? He tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle he was determined to solve. You fainted in my arms. You slept in my house. You're wearing clothes I bought, eating food from my kitchen. You took my help when you were too proud or too desperate to refuse, because I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Emma. You could have insisted on going home last night. Could have refused the doctor, the food, the clothes. Could have walked out this morning. He leaned forward slightly. But you didn't. Want to know why? I said nothing, jaw clenched. Because some part of you recognized that you're safer here than anywhere else. Because you're smart enough to know that a man who catches you instead of letting you fall, who calls a doctor instead of sending you away, who gets angry at bruises he didn't cause, that man is not your enemy. He's not my friend either. No, Dante agreed softly. I'm not your friend. Friends don't have the thoughts I'm having about you. Friends don't want to hunt down everyone who ever hurt you and make them bleed. Friends don't look at you and see something they need to possess. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they sent heat pooling low in my stomach, a response as unwelcome as it was undeniable. What do you want from me? I asked again, quieter this time. Right now, I want you to heal. I want you to eat, sleep, and stop looking like you're expecting the world to crush you. He moved closer, crouched down so we were eye level. Long term, I haven't decided yet. But here's what I know. You need protection, resources, a place where you're not constantly fighting to survive. And I need... He stopped, jaw tightening. What? I pressed. What do you need? Something real. The admission seemed to cost him. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Power, money, protection, favors. They lie, manipulate, pretend to be what I need them to be. But you don't know how to play those games. You don't know enough to lie convincingly. When you look at me, you see exactly what I am, and you're honest about your fear. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with that same unexpected gentleness. That's rare, valuable, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep it. So I'm what? A pet? A possession? You're a woman under my protection. His thumb traced my bottom lip, and I hated how my breath caught. What that means exactly, we'll figure out together, but understand this. While you're here, no one touches you. No one hurts you. No one takes from you without giving back. That includes me. And when I want to leave, something dark flickered in his eyes. We'll discuss that if and when it happens. If, not when. The distinction wasn't lost on me. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. Marcus found your ex-boyfriend. My heart stopped. Jake? Jake Sullivan. Currently residing at 247 Morrison Street, apartment 3B, unemployed. Has outstanding warrants for drug possession and assault. Dante's voice was clinical, detached, but his eyes burned. He's been looking for you. Called the restaurant yesterday asking if you still worked there. Fear, sharp and immediate, cut through everything else. He can't know I'm here. He can't. He won't. Dante stood, pulling me up with him. By tonight, Jake Sullivan will understand that you're under my protection. He'll understand that approaching you, speaking to you, even thinking about you too hard will have consequences he can't survive. What are you going to do? What I do best. He cupped my face in both hands, forced me to look at him. Emma, I need you to trust me. Just for now, just in this. Let me handle this threat. Let me make you safe. By hurting him, by ensuring he never hurts you again. No apology in his voice, no regret, just certainty. I won't kill him, not unless you ask me to, but he needs to understand what happens when someone damages something of mine. I'm not... You are. He kissed my forehead, quick and possessive. Whether you've accepted it yet or not, you're mine now, and I protect what's mine. He released me, moved back to his desk. was already pulling on his jacket and checking his weapon. A sleek black handgun that appeared from a drawer with practiced ease. The transformation was instantaneous, from the man who'd touched me gently to the predator who ruled through fear and violence. Rosa will stay with you. Don't leave the house. Don't go near windows without guards present. And Emma, he paused at the door, looked back at me with something that might have been concern or possession, or both twisted together. When I come back, we're going to talk about everything. Your mother's medical bills, your brother's situation, what you need, what you want, what you're willing to give in exchange for safety. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in his war room, surrounded by maps of territory and surveillance photos of enemies, understanding with crystal clarity that I'd stepped into a world where violence was currency and protection came with chains made of silk and steel. I walked to the window, looked out over gardens that seemed to stretch forever, and wondered if I'd just been rescued or captured. The answer, I suspected, was both. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Rosa brought lunch, another elaborate spread I forced myself to eat despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. She chattered about inconsequential things, clearly trying to distract me, but I heard nothing. My mind kept circling back to Dante's cold expression when he'd left. The gun tucked into his waistband, the promise of violence hanging in the air like smoke, by ensuring he never hurts you again. I should have felt guilty, should have protested more, insisted that Jake wasn't worth whatever Dante was planning. But the truth, the ugly truth I didn't want to examine too closely, was that part of me wanted Jake to hurt. Wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain he'd inflicted on me over 6 months of escalating violence. The baby. I kept coming back to that. The baby I'd lost while Jake was out drinking. The baby he'd caused me to lose when his fist had connected with my stomach during an argument about money. The emergency room doctor had been kind but clinical. Sometimes these things just happen. But I knew. I knew it was Jake's violence that had stolen that small flutter of life before it ever had a chance. Miss Emma? Maria appeared in the doorway of the sitting room where I'd been staring at a book without reading it. There's someone here to see you. A woman. She says her name is Caroline Foster, my mother. Ice flooded my veins. How did she know I was here? Mr. Moretti sent a car for her this morning. He thought you'd want to see her. Make sure she's all right. Maria's expression was carefully neutral. She's in the front parlor. Should I tell her you're not available? I stood on shaky legs. Of course Dante had sent for her. Of course he'd tracked down my mother without asking. Pulled her into this world without warning. The man didn't ask permission. He simply acted and expected everyone else to adapt. No. I'll see her. My mother sat perched on the edge of an antique sofa, looking painfully out of place among the expensive furniture and artwork. She'd lost more weight since I'd last seen her 2 weeks ago, her face gaunt, her skin that particular gray shade that came from too much chemotherapy and too little hope, but her eyes, sharp and worried, found mine immediately. Emma. She stood, swayed slightly, and I rushed forward to steady her. What's going on? A man came to the apartment this morning with a car, said you'd been hurt, that you were staying here. I thought something terrible had happened. I'm fine, Mom. It's complicated. Complicated? She pulled back, studied my face with a mother's keen eye. You look exhausted, thinner, and you're wearing clothes that cost more than our rent. Her voice dropped. Emma, who is this man? What have you gotten yourself into? Before I could answer, Rosa appeared with tea, because of course she did. Because Dante's household ran with the efficiency of a military operation. She set the tray down, smiled warmly at my mother, and left us alone with a discretion that felt deliberately choreographed. Sit down, Mom. Please. Before you fall down. We sat together on the sofa, and I poured tea with shaking hands, trying to figure out how to explain the inexplicable. How did I tell my dying mother that I'd fainted into the arms of a Mafia boss who'd decided to claim me as his own, that I was living in his house, wearing his clothes, accepting his protection in exchange for... what? I still wasn't sure. Emma. My mother's hand covered mine, stopping the nervous motion. Talk to me. So I did. Not everything. I couldn't tell her about Jake's violence. Couldn't add that burden to her already overwhelming load. But I told her about fainting at work, about Dante catching me, about the doctor and the food and the offer of help I'd been too desperate to refuse. She listened in silence, her expression growing progressively more concerned. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This man," she finally said. "Dante Moretti. Do you know who he is? What he does?" "Yes." "And you're staying here anyway?" "I didn't have a choice, Mom. I was killing myself trying to keep up with your medical bills and the rent and—" "So you traded one danger for another?" Her voice cracked. "Emma, men like that don't help people out of kindness. There's always a price." "I know that. I'm not stupid." "I never said you were stupid. I said you were desperate, and desperate people make dangerous decisions." She squeezed my hand hard enough to hurt. "I'm dying, sweetheart. We both know it. The chemo isn't working anymore. Dr. Patterson told me last week that we're looking at months, maybe weeks, and I can accept that. What I can't accept is you selling yourself to some criminal to pay for treatments that won't save me anyway." The words hit like a physical blow. "Don't say that. You're going to be fine. There are other treatments, clinical trials, that we can't afford, that insurance won't cover." She cupped my face with both hands, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Baby, I need you to listen to me. I need you to promise me that when I'm gone, you'll get out of here. That you won't let this man, no matter how kind he seems, no matter what he offers, trap you in his world. Promise me." I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat because I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. Because for the first time in years, I'd slept through the night without fear. I'd eaten until I was full. I'd been warm and safe and seen, truly seen by someone who looked at me like I mattered. But I couldn't tell my mother that, couldn't admit that I was already halfway to accepting the cage Dante was building around me. "I promise." I lied, and hated myself for it. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't push. Instead, she pulled me into a hug that smelled of hospital antiseptic and the lavender perfume she'd worn my entire life. I held her fragile body and felt the bird-like delicacy of her bones, and knew she was right. Months, maybe weeks. And then I'd be truly alone, except I wouldn't be, would I? I'd have Dante, with his dangerous protection and his possessive claim, and his promise that what was his stayed his. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt almost like relief. A knock at the door interrupted us. Marcus, the guard with the scar, appeared. "Sorry to interrupt, miss, but the boss is back. He's asking for you." My stomach clenched. Is everything okay?" "Yes, ma'am. Everything's handled." The way he said it made clear exactly what handled meant. I turned to my mother. "I need to go." She managed a weak smile. "But Emma, be careful. Men who claim to protect you often end up being the thing you need protection from." Marcus escorted my mother to the car, a different one, I noticed, driven by a different guard, and then led me through the house to a part I hadn't seen before. Down a hallway lined with closed doors, down a flight of stairs, into what could only be described as a basement level that felt more like a bunker. The door at the end opened into a room that made my blood run cold. Concrete floors with a drain in the center. Walls lined with tools that looked medical and menacing in equal measure, and in a chair in the middle of the room, hands zip-tied behind his back and blood dripping from his nose, sat Jake. He looked up when I entered, and something like relief crossed his battered face. "Emma, thank God. Tell them there's been a mistake. Tell them I didn't—" "Shut up." Dante's voice came from the shadows. He stepped into the light, and I saw blood on his knuckles, his shirt partially untucked, his hair mussed from violence. But his eyes were calm, almost cold as they found mine. "Emma doesn't need to tell us anything. We know exactly what you did." He moved to stand behind Jake's chair, one hand resting almost casually on the other man's shoulder. Jake flinched. "We had a conversation, Jake and I," Dante continued conversationally, "about respect, about consequences, about what happens to men who put their hands on women under my protection." His fingers tightened on Jake's shoulder, and I heard bone creak. He's been very apologetic, haven't you, Jake? I'm sorry. Jake's voice broke. Emma, I'm so sorry. I was drunk. I was angry about the money. I didn't mean. The baby. Dante's voice went deadly quiet. Tell her about the baby. Jake went white. I didn't. It was an accident. I didn't know she was pregnant when you what? Dante leaned down, spoke directly into Jake's ear but loud enough for me to hear. When you punched her in the stomach hard enough to cause internal bleeding? When you left her alone to deal with the miscarriage while you were out drinking? When you came back 3 days later and hit her again because she was crying? Every word was a knife, cutting open wounds I'd tried to close. I wrapped my arms around myself, felt my ribs protest, and couldn't find my voice. Look at her, Dante commanded, forcing Jake's head up. Look at what you did. The bruises. The fear. The woman who worked herself into collapse because she'd rather starve than risk you finding her and demanding money she didn't have. Jake was crying now, pathetic and broken. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, Emma, tell him. Tell him to let me go. I'll leave. I'll never bother you again. I swear. Dante looked at me over Jake's head, his expression unreadable. It's your choice, Emma. I can make him disappear. One word from you, and he'll never hurt anyone again. Or I can make sure he understands the consequences of coming near you and send him away with a warning that will keep him awake at night for the rest of his miserable life. The choice should have been easy. I wasn't a killer. I didn't believe in that kind of justice. But looking at Jake, at the man who'd stolen my baby, my safety, my sense of self, I felt a rage so pure it was almost cleansing. I want him gone, I heard myself say. Not dead. Just gone. Far away where he can never find me again. Dante nodded slowly. Marcus. Take him to the clinic. Get him patched up. Then put him on a bus to California with enough money for a fresh start and a very clear understanding of what happens if he ever comes back east. Yes, sir. As Marcus hauled Jake from the chair, Jake looked back at me one last time. Emma, I really am. Don't. My voice was steadier than I expected. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just go. And if I ever see you again, I won't stop him next time. Jake's face crumbled, but Marcus was already dragging him toward the door. It closed behind them with a heavy thud, leaving me alone with Dante in that terrible room that smelled of blood and fear and violence. You okay? Dante asked quietly. I laughed. A broken, slightly hysterical sound. I just condemned a man to exile. I watched you beat him bloody, and somehow I feel better than I have in months. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you human. He crossed to me, hands coming up to frame my face with surprising gentleness given the blood still on his knuckles. He hurt you. He killed your baby. You're entitled to your rage, Emma. You're entitled to want him punished. My mother thinks you're dangerous. I am dangerous. She thinks you'll trap me here, that I'm trading one cage for another. Maybe you are. His thumbs stroked my cheekbones. But at least in my cage, you're fed and safe, and no one's allowed to hurt you but me. And I have no intention of hurting you, Bella. None at all. The endearment sent warmth spiraling through me despite everything. What do you want from me, Dante? Really? Right now? He leaned his forehead against mine, close enough that I could feel his breath against my lips. I want you to stay. I want you to let me take care of your mother's medical bills, your brother's legal fees, all the debts crushing you. I want you to sleep in my house and eat my food and wear the clothes I buy you. I want you to stop running, stop fighting, stop trying to survive alone. And in return, you give me your honesty, your trust, eventually, your presence. His hand slid down to my waist, pulled me closer. And maybe, if you decide you want it, something more. But that choice is yours, Emma. I won't force it, won't demand it, won't take what isn't freely given. I should have pulled away, should have insisted on independence, on finding my own path, on not owing this dangerous man anything more than I already did. but his hands were warm and steady, and for the first time since I'd lost the baby, I felt something other than hollow. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." His smile was slow and devastating. "Okay? I'll stay, for now, until I figure out what comes next. That's all I'm asking." He kissed my forehead, my temple, the corner of my mouth with a restraint that felt like its own form of possession. "Come on. Rosa will have dinner ready and you need to eat. Dr. Castellanos' orders." As he led me out of that terrible basement room, his hand warm and possessive at the small of my back, I realized my mother had been right about one thing. I had traded one cage for another. But at least this cage had a door I could see, and the man holding the key looked at me like I was something precious rather than something disposable. For now, that was enough. 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine I'd never imagined possible. Mornings began with breakfast in the sunroom, Rosa insisting I eat every bite while Dante read through reports and made calls in rapid Italian. Afternoons were quieter, reading in the library, walking the gardens under the watchful eyes of guards, visits from Dr. Castellano, who monitored my recovery with professional satisfaction. Evenings meant dinner with Dante when he was home, conversations that ranged from careful small talk to surprisingly deep discussions about books, music, the parts of ourselves we'd learned to hide from the world. My mother's treatments had been transferred to a private facility, the best in the state, Dante informed me matter-of-factly, as if spending hundreds of thousands of dollars was no more significant than buying groceries. My brother's legal fees were handled by lawyers who made his charges disappear like smoke. The debts that had crushed me for years vanished overnight, paid in full by a man who barely blinked at the amounts. I should have felt grateful. I did feel grateful. But gratitude came tangled with something darker, more complicated, a growing awareness that every dollar spent was another link in the chain binding me to Dante Moretti. And the most unsettling part? I was starting to not mind. He'd been true to his word about not forcing anything. He touched me carefully, a hand at my back, fingers brushing mine across the dinner table. His jacket draped over my shoulders when the evening turned cold, but he never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give. The restraint was its own form of seduction, making me hyper-aware of every casual touch, every heated look, every moment when his control slipped just slightly, and I caught glimpses of the hunger beneath. I was in the library on a Thursday afternoon, curled in the window seat with a novel I wasn't really reading, when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Miss Emma? The boss wants to see you in his office." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "Is something wrong?" "He'll explain. But..." Marcus hesitated, which was unusual for him. "Maybe brace yourself. He's got that look." I found Dante standing at his desk, staring down at a folder with an expression I'd learned to recognize over the past weeks, cold fury barely held in check. When he looked up and saw me, some of the ice in his eyes thawed, but not all of it. "Close the door." I did, heart pounding. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's handled." He gestured to the folder. "But we need to talk about your ex-boyfriend." "Jake? I thought you said he was gone. California." "He was. He is." Dante's jaw tightened. "But before he left, he was busy. Calling people, asking questions, trying to find out who took you, who I am, what my weaknesses might be." Ice flooded my veins. "Did he?" "He didn't find anything useful. My people intercepted him before he could cause real damage." "But Emma..." He moved around the desk, took my hands in his. "He was planning to come back, to find you, to..." His voice dropped, went deadly quiet. "To finish what he started." The room tilted. "What does that mean?" "It means Jake Sullivan never intended to leave you alone. It means the apologies were lies. The promises empty. It means..." He pulled me closer, hands framing my face with desperate gentleness. "It means I need you to understand that what I did, what I'm about to tell you, I did for you, to protect you, to make sure he could never hurt you again." "Dante." My voice shook. "What did you do?" "Jake Sullivan died in a car accident 3 days ago. Single vehicle collision on Highway 5, just outside of Sacramento. He was drunk, blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit, lost control, hit a barrier. The car went up in flames. His eyes bored into mine. It was quick, painless, and necessary. The words didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to process them, skittered away from the implications. You said, you promised you wouldn't kill him unless I asked. I promised I wouldn't kill him then. That was before I learned he was planning to come back, before my people found texts on his phone describing exactly what he wanted to do to you when he found you. Dante's hands tightened on my face. I won't apologize for this, Emma. I won't pretend it was anything other than what it was. An execution disguised as an accident. But I will tell you that I'd do it again. 1,000 times over. Because keeping you safe matters more than keeping promises made to a man who was already planning to break his. I should have been horrified, should have pulled away, demanded he let me go, run screaming from the house and the man who'd just admitted to murder. But all I felt was a strange, detached relief. Jake was gone. Really gone. Not in California where he could change his mind and come back. Gone in a way that was permanent, final, irreversible. Show me, I heard myself say. The texts. I need to see them. Dante hesitated, then reached for the folder. Inside were printed screenshots. Messages between Jake and someone named Tommy, planning in graphic detail what Jake intended to do. Find me, hurt me, make me pay for embarrassing him, for choosing another man, for thinking I could escape. The last message, sent the day before he died. I'm coming back next week. She thinks she's safe, but she's mine. Always has been. Always will be. And I'm gonna remind her what happens to bitches who forget their place. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not grief for Jake, but rage for the woman I'd been, the one who'd believed his apologies and hidden her bruises, and convinced herself that love meant accepting pain. Emma. Dante's voice was soft. Look at me. I did, and saw understanding in his eyes. Not pity. He'd never pitied me, which was one of the things I'd come to value most. But recognition of what I was feeling. He was never going to leave you alone, Dante said quietly. Men like him don't. They see women as possessions, and they can't stand losing what they think belongs to them. I've seen it 100 times, restraining orders that don't work, safe houses that aren't safe, promises from abusers that mean nothing. His thumbs wiped away my tears with infinite gentleness. I wasn't going to let you become another statistic, another woman who died because the system failed to protect her, so you protected me the only way you know how. It wasn't a question. Yes. By becoming a killer. I've always been a killer, Bella. You knew that when you stayed. The only difference now is that I killed for you specifically, rather than for business or territory or revenge. He pulled me against his chest, and I let him. Let myself sink into the warmth and solid strength of him. I understand if that changes things. If you need to leave, to get away from what I am, I'll set you up somewhere safe. Make sure you're protected and provided for, but I won't lie about what I did or pretend to be something I'm not. I stood in his arms, breathing in cedar and gunpowder, and made a choice. The kind of choice that would define everything that came after. I don't want to leave. His entire body went still. Emma? I should want to leave. I know that. I should be horrified, disgusted, terrified. I pulled back far enough to look up at him. But all I feel is relief and gratitude. And I swallowed hard. And something else. Something I've been trying not to feel because it's insane and dangerous and probably self-destructive. What? His voice was barely a whisper. Safe. I feel safe with you. For the first time in my life, I feel like someone's actually protecting me instead of using me or hurting me or abandoning me. My hands fisted in his shirt. Is that crazy? Does that make me a terrible person? No, Bella. It makes you someone who's been hurt so badly that basic safety feels like a gift. He kissed my forehead, lingering. And I'm selfish enough to be glad that you feel safe with me, even if the reasons are complicated. Everything about this is complicated. Yes. But that doesn't make it wrong. I tilted my face up, saw the hunger in his eyes that he'd been controlling so carefully for weeks, and made another choice. Kiss me. Emma, please, I need to feel something other than this. I need to know that I'm not just a charity case or an obligation or... He kissed me before I could finish, swallowing the words with a hunger that stole my breath. It wasn't gentle or careful. It was possession and promise, and 3 weeks of restraint finally snapping. His hand slid into my hair, angled my head for better access, and I opened for him without hesitation. This was dangerous. This was accepting the cage completely, walking in willingly and asking him to lock the door. But I was so tired of being alone, of fighting, of pretending I was strong enough to survive on my own. Maybe I was weak. Maybe I was broken. Maybe I was making the worst decision of my life. But God, it felt good to finally stop running. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. If we do this, if you give yourself to me, I won't let you go easily. You understand that? I know. I'm possessive. Jealous. I'll want to know where you are, who you're with, that you're safe every moment of every day. I'll buy you things. Control aspects of your life. Make decisions you might not agree with if I think they're necessary for your protection. I know. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things. And some of them might horrify you. I know that too. I cupped his face, felt the scratch of stubble against my palms. But you've also been kinder to me than anyone else in my life. You've given me safety and security and treated me like I matter. So maybe you're not a good man, but you're good to me. And right now, that's enough. His smile was slow and devastating. You're going to ruin me, Bella. Good. Maybe we can ruin each other. He kissed me again, softer this time, and I felt the shift in the air between us. Acceptance, surrender, the acknowledgement that we'd both made our choices and would live with the consequences. Come with me, he murmured against my lips. There's something I need to show you. He led me upstairs, past the guest room I'd been occupying, to the master suite at the end of the hall. It was stunning. Masculine but comfortable, dominated by an enormous bed and French doors opening onto a private balcony, but it was the smaller room off to the side that he showed me. It had been converted into an office. A beautiful one, with a desk facing windows that overlooked the gardens, built-in bookshelves, and comfortable seating. On the desk sat a brand new laptop, legal pads, pens, and a framed photograph I recognized, my mother and me, taken on my 18th birthday. I had your things brought from your apartment, Dante said quietly. What little there was. But this is yours. A space where you can work, study, do whatever you want. I know you never finished college. I thought maybe you'd want to start again, online courses or, you did this for me? My voice cracked. I did this because I want you to have a life here, not just an existence, because you're smart and capable and you deserve opportunities you've never had. He pulled me against his side. I'm not just offering you protection, Emma. I'm offering you a future, one where you don't have to work yourself to death just to survive. Where you can pursue dreams instead of scrambling to pay bills. I turned in his arms, looked up at this dangerous, complicated man who'd killed for me, and built me a study and looked at me like I was something precious. What do you want in return? You. Just you. His hand cupped my cheek. Your presence. Your trust, eventually. He hesitated. Your love. If I earn it. I know it's not something I can demand or buy. But I'm hoping, given time, that you might choose to give it anyway. Standing in that beautiful room, surrounded by evidence of his care, and claimed by a man who was equal parts monster and savior, I realized something. I'd already started falling. Probably had been since the moment he'd caught me before I hit the ground. Since he'd asked who hurt you with murder in his eyes. Since he'd shown me that protection could mean safety instead of control. I'm already halfway there, I admitted. Which terrifies me. Good. He kissed the top of my head. Fear means you understand what's at stake. But Emma, I promise you this. I will never hurt you the way he did. I will never make you feel small or disposable or worthless. You're mine now, and what's mine is treasured, protected, kept safe. Even in a cage? Even in a cage, he smiled slightly. But it's a cage with open doors, Bella. You can leave anytime you choose. I'll hate it. I'll probably try to convince you to stay, but I won't stop you. Won't force you. Won't punish you for choosing freedom over comfort. I didn't believe him. Not entirely. Men like Dante Moretti didn't let go easily. But I appreciated the lie, appreciated that he cared enough to offer me the illusion of choice even if we both knew the truth. I was his now. Completely. Irrevocably. And the most surprising part? I was okay with that. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. Not as an obligation or expectation, but because I want to hold you while you sleep. Because I want to wake up and know you're safe. Because 3 weeks of sleeping down the hall from you has been torture. Okay. That night, I lay in Dante Moretti's arms in his enormous bed, listening to his heartbeat beneath my ear, feeling safer than I'd ever felt in my life. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd escaped one dangerous man only to willingly surrender to another. But there was a difference, I told myself. Jake had taken from me. Dante gave. It was enough. It had to be enough. 3 months later, my mother passed away peacefully in the private facility, surrounded by comfort and dignity that my father's insurance and my waitressing tips never could have provided. Dante held me through the grief, organized the funeral, stood beside me at the graveside with his hand steady at my back. My brother was released early on good behavior. Dante's lawyers had worked miracles. He had a job waiting, an apartment paid for 6 months in advance, and a very clear understanding of who to thank for his second chance. 6 months after that, Dante slipped a ring onto my finger, a diamond that caught light like captured fire. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, but not quite a command either. A request from a man who'd learned that I needed to feel like I had choices, even when we both knew I'd already chosen. "Yes," I said, because it was the only answer that made sense. The only answer I wanted to give. I became Emma Moretti on a spring afternoon, surrounded by people who called my husband boss, and looked at me with a respect I'd never earned but wore anyway. I wore white, virginal and absurd considering everything, and promised to love and honor a man who'd killed for me, stolen for me, built an empire partially on blood and bullets. And I meant every word, because somewhere between fainting into his arms and waking up in his bed, between accepting his protection and surrendering to his possession, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Dante Moretti. He was dangerous. He was possessive. He was exactly the kind of man my mother had warned me about, but he was also mine, and I was his. In the end, that was all that mattered. Years later, I would sometimes think about the girl I'd been. Invisible waitress, buried under debt, bruised and broken and barely surviving. I would think about the moment everything changed. The crystal chandelier flickering overhead. The way the floor had rushed up to meet me. The strong arms that caught me before I fell. And I would understand that sometimes salvation comes dressed as damnation. Sometimes the cage that traps you is the only thing keeping you safe. Sometimes the monster who claims you is the only one who sees you as human. I'd traded one life for another, one set of chains for another. But these chains were made of gold and promise, and the kind of love that bordered on obsession, and I wore them willingly.